out with that, and I'm going to jump on and talk about, we're going to take you through 3 steps, and then we're going to go through some bonus pricing systems, some of which you will never have heard of before. So we're going to do that right now on this call. Just going to go ahead and make sure that we are all set to go. But yeah, let me know if you can hear me. Go ahead and type into the chat, where are you based? Can you hear me? This is going to be a very interesting conversation today. So the first thing I want to do, and if you're wondering, I'm going to share my screen over on the YouTube channel. So you'll be able to see me on the YouTube channel. I can see a couple of you guys there already. Hello. I am going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to talk about how to price for ADHD entrepreneurship. Okay. So let's jump in. Hello, Jenna. Good to see you. Okay. So pricing. Even if you think that you have a full sense of pricing and how it works and all of those things, it's not quite as simple as that. So I just want to make sure that we have a really good sense of it, how to price. First of all, the thing that I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and I want you to think about what you do. What is the thing that you sell for? Maybe you're a coach. I know we've got some coaches here. I am a coach. Maybe you provide a service. I've been talking with a lot of interior designers. I've also talked with a lot of tradies, people who work in roofing and contracting in different ways. Maybe you run a software business. So what do you sell? And then the thing that you sell specifically, what is the market rate for what you sell if somebody else was going to do it? And this is really important because I actually had a conversation with somebody just today, and they were like, oh, my profit margin is really good. And I was like, okay, cool. But if you charged a market rate to somebody else to do the job that you were doing, would you be making a profit then? And the answer was no. So this happens a lot. And if this is you, go ahead and give some emoji love in the chat or type your questions. I'm going to be answering questions as we go. But definitely this is something that you can struggle with in terms of pricing. So the first thing we want to know is, what is your market rate? Use ChatGPT or something else to figure it out, because that is your baseline. The second thing we want to know is, and we're going to go deep here, guys, because I don't want to, gatekeep anything. I want to make sure you have all the strategies that you need to price really effectively for what you're doing. So the second thing is, what is your cost of customer acquisition? So it sounds complicated, but basically I'm just saying, how much are you spending to get a new customer? So if you're doing Facebook ads, is that something, how much are you spending? If you're doing cold outreach, how much time, again, would it cost to hire somebody else to do that cold outreach? That's something that we want to think about as well. So all of these different things, you want to go ahead and think about, what is the cost of customer acquisition? So we don't currently do any paid ads. Everything we do is organic content, but we do a lot of stuff. We have a podcast that requires an editor. We have a researcher who researches a lot of the papers that we find before I review them. And we have, other people behind the scenes, all creating the wonderful content that you see here, as well as me, writing the content, sharing it, all of that kind of stuff. So that is everything that you need to be thinking about when you're doing the cost of customer acquisition. So that's the next thing you want to consider. Then the third thing you want to know is, what is your profit margin? So give me a shout out. What are you guys taking away from this so far? The next thing that you want to go ahead and do is your cost of customer acquisition, and then your profit margin, because you actually need to make a profit. Because think about it like this: if you were running a business and you were in a position where you were just going, yep, okay, this is what it would cost to hire somebody, and then this is what it would cost to acquire the next customer, and then you didn't add any profit margin. And sometimes, honestly, people don't want to, because I hear all the time, oh, I don't want to make a profit, et cetera, et cetera. Actually heard that this week. Well, now you're not making any money. Okay, so this is, if you were to hire somebody else to do the job, and even if you don't right now, what if you get sick? What if something happens? What if you can't do the job for some reason? You want to go ahead and make sure that you could hire someone else to do the job. That profit margin is the amount you make as the business owner. and I'm sort of butchering it a little bit. Obviously, accountants are going to be like, no, it's not. But essentially, that's what we're thinking about. So I want to know from you, what is the profit margin that you want to make? And again, I would recommend not being too low with this, because you probably want to grow your business, and you're going to probably invest a lot of the amount that you make into training. You might do a program like the Focus Balance Growth program. I definitely invested some of what I did, and a lot of what I did actually, was investing into learning how to be a better coach, how to be a better business coach, how to research ADHD better. These are the things that I learned that were part of the profit. So we want to have a healthy profit. Again, you can ask AI for what is standard in your area, but just remember, if you're going with 2% or 10%, like, that's very low. That's very low. It might work in some industries, but especially if you're a service-based industry, it shouldn't really be that low. So this gives you your baseline. What is your market rate? What is your cost of customer acquisition? What is your profit margin that you're actually going to live on, given that you need to price this as if someone else is going to be in it, because they might have to be. Again, we want to have focused, balanced businesses. We don't want to burn out. We want to have that option if we need to take a break. That is your baseline. That is the point at which you have to price. So a lot of times people are like pricing very much based on feelings and based on insecurity and based on rejection sensitivity. Again, this is the ADHD side of it, right? We don't want to be rejected, so we want to, price really low, and we say to ourselves like, okay, well, if I get like 1,000 people to sign up, then maybe this pricing would make sense. But in reality, we know, and it's worth looking at your market and saying, okay, but like, how much would it cost for me to find 1,000 people? Maybe I should be working with a smaller number, at least for now. And so if you're going with that mid-market, then this is your baseline. If you're saying, okay, I'm going to have like, 25 people, 25 to 50 to 60 people in my business that I'm working with, if you're service-based particularly, then this is my baseline. This is the number we actually have to stick with. So hopefully that makes sense. Give me some love if you've been listening to this in the chat and you're going, yes, that makes sense. I actually have to do these numbers. I don't get to just pick a number based on how I'm feeling, which we've all done this. And I do want to say, when I first started in my business, I did not do any of this advice. I was basically like, I could live on this. This would be great. This would give me enough money to pay rent and to like get to the thing that I'm going to. And then we all start out like that. And I definitely was one of those people. So, this is something that we all struggle with 100%. In fact, it was my own business mentor who really encouraged me to double my prices. And when I did that, I was terrified. I was literally like, I trust you and I've invested in you. And so I'm going to do this, but I don't know if this is going to work. And nobody cared. They were probably wondering like, why is this woman charging so little? Nobody cared. Nobody even discussed it. And I was able to finally actually make money and actually have a business that was going to survive. So yeah. And then when I hired people, I fully, went with a really high rate and had very low profit margins and did all of those things. So just know, if you're listening to this, I have made every single pricing mistake as well. And feel free to write in the chat any questions you have about pricing as we go. Okay, so let's go with some bonuses. This is your baseline pricing. I want to go with some bonuses, and I want to talk about one thing that is very specific to ADHD that I got taught, that I've lived by, and you need to think about as well if you're pricing with ADHD. The first thing is you want to have about a 60-40 sales rate. This is not something that I have come up with. The last person I heard talk about it is Dan Martell, but I think a lot of people talk about this. The idea that if you are in a position where you are asking people for money a lot and 100% of people say yes, you're probably pricing too low in your market. It's just a good way to get a sense of your market. You want to be in a position where about 40% of people are going to say yes, and 60% of people are going to go, oh, I'm not sure, the pricing is a little bit too much for me, essentially. That's usually a good sign that you're in the same space. And on the other side, if only 10% of people want to work with you, you might be pricing too high. But I'm going to tell you something right now. Most of you are not pricing too high. I've done this work with a lot of entrepreneurs for a number of years at this point, and Most of the time, what I hear is people want to provide really good value. They want to really support people. You guys often really care about what you do. That's why you do it. And so you're not necessarily in the position where you're like, we're just going to charge the highest price. So if you're worried that you're doing that, chances are you're not. That is probably not your struggle. And if you do worry a little bit about pricing, my recommendation is always think about value. It's not always about price. Often we can get tied up in a price war and we can be like, oh, I felt really bad today. And this week, a lot of people didn't want what I'm doing. So maybe my problem is I need to reduce my prices. And, give me some love in the comments if you guys have ever done that. You've been like, oh my gosh, I have to reduce my prices. And in reality, what you want to go ahead and you want to do is, think about the value. Are you really communicating the value that you have? Are you really talking and, sharing that value? Is that transformation, something that they understand? Is that transformation something that they trust? Do you have enough authority pieces, showing that other people have gotten value? Because if you haven't, maybe you do need to have lower prices until somebody does get that value that you say that you can provide. These are the things that we want to be able to do. So focus on providing value before you focus on reducing your price. And then the last thing, this is ADHD specific. And this is something that my very first business coach actually told me. And I've lived by it. And, shout out to John Torrance. He does not do one-on-one coaching anymore. I was very, very lucky to get to work with him back in the day. But basically, we want to think about the dopamine of it all. Because at the end of the day, this is a voluntary activity. You are choosing to be a business owner. And if you're working with somebody, especially for those of you who are doing more service-based businesses, you are choosing to, get paid a certain amount, and you're either being paid to, have that person in your business, or if you're starting out, you're often being paid your time with money. And we can talk, if you have any questions about, your time with money and all that kind of stuff, let me know, because we talk about that as well. But you need to actually price at a point where you want to do a good job. One of the things that I remember talking to him about was, okay, well, how do I know, like, I've done this market rate and I've done that, and, I've got my percentages and all that kind of stuff, but like, how do I know? And he said to me, he's like, do you get dopamine from this price point? Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you will be in a position where you were at a price point and you were like, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm being paid this much. I feel like this value is fair, and I'm turning up and I'm doing the prep and I've got bells on and this is great. And sometimes, especially when you're doing those service-based businesses, you will be in a position where you'll be like, this isn't actually, I'm not enthusiastic about working at this price anymore. Maybe you have too many clients. Maybe you need to increase your prices so you can reduce your clients, so you can spend more time doing the research. And I did that with my own one-on-one clients. I don't take that many people at all anymore. And so maybe that's how you're doing it. Maybe that's where you're adjusting. But keep in mind, you have ADHD symptoms, which means we're not just talking about pricing. We're also talking about dopamine. We're talking about what is the dopamine boost you get for doing the task. And, there's many, many reasons that you can have dopamine. But at the end of the day, if you're doing something, 20 hours a week for a lower price than the market rate, your chances are you're not going to have the dopamine for this task. So keep that in mind above all else. Okay, guys, I'm going to summarize what we talked about, and then I want you to type into the chat, what is questions? I'm glad this is good. I'm glad this is helping. I want to be your ADHD implementation coach for entrepreneurs. That is what I do. So go ahead and type in the chat any questions. I'm going to recap what we've just talked about. And then if you want to join my Focus Balance Growth program, we have a few spots open until September 1st. So you can just go ahead and DM me Grow on Instagram, and I will chat with you there and we can see if you're a good fit. So let's go back into it. When we're talking about your baseline, we want to know, number one, what is your market rate? What would it cost somebody else to do this task? Number two, what is your cost of customer acquisition? You probably have to do something. And if you say, I do referral, and everyone says referral, that's cool, but we want to scale that. So what would it cost to scale something? What would it cost to hire an assistant, to find podcasts that you can go on, or, to reach out to people, or what would it cost for that customer acquisition? We need to be able to fund it. Otherwise, we're just going to get stuck in referral land, and that's great, It's hard to scale. And then the third thing is, what is your profit? If you're only paying for somebody else to do a job and for the cost of customer acquisition, you're not getting a profit, you're not really paying yourself. So you do have to have a profit margin. No, it probably shouldn't be 10%. Have a look at what's normal in your industry, but just remember that if you have a service-based business, you are taking on a lot of risk. People could just leave. That happens sometimes. Your profit margin is going to be the buffer that's going to help you feel confident and feel secure, which is going to help you stay focused and get what you need done. So that is your baseline. You can also talk about cost of goods sold and things like that, but we won't go into that today. Then we want to say, okay, how do we price past that? Well, we've got the 60-40 sales rate. If you're in a position where somebody, you're talking to 10 people a week, and 40% are saying yes and 60% are saying no, you're probably priced about right. If you're in a position where 100% of people are saying yes, you're probably priced too low. If only 1 or 2 people are saying yes, you're probably priced too high. But most of you are not pricing too high. I can promise you that. I've talked to many, many entrepreneurs at this point. And then the last thing is, don't forget the dopamine. You have to want to do it. This is a voluntary activity. If you are grinding it out, taking many, many, many people, and you're burning out and you're not having time to grow and invest, and you don't actually show up with bells on, ready to go, and you're excited, chances are you might not be giving yourself the dopamine you need. Maybe you're going to have to increase your price. This was something I got told by my mentor, and it was very helpful. So keep that in mind. Okay, let's jump into some questions. What have we got here? Wonder why I lost interest in the last position working for someone else. Yes, I mean, this is again, I mean, the dopamine price thing works whether you're running your own business or whether you're working for somebody else. Sometimes that's how we know it's time to get a promotion. I've moved the final blue thing, Jetta, so you can see that now. Does anybody else have any questions? And if you want to know a little bit more about the dopamine side of it all, we are going to be talking about that in tomorrow's video. We're going to be talking about you're doing dopamine wrong, basically, which is a little bit of, a thing, but really, truly, a lot of people are. If you give yourself a reward at the end of a task, then you're doing dopamine wrong. So that's what we're going to be talking about. But yeah, any other questions? Otherwise, I'm going to head off and I will see you guys tomorrow. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming along. It has been wonderful to have you this week. Really good. I've just had a question come in. I'm still figuring out what position I'm interested in when it comes to entrepreneurship. Well, I think a lot of us are in that position. And again, you want to think about, what do you want to do? What is your skill? What is the thing that you can provide to the world that no one else can? Those are kind of the things you want to think about when you're thinking about entrepreneurship and how to get started. And ultimately, just try it. Sell it to somebody. See what they think. That is how you get started in entrepreneurship. Okay, guys, wonderful to have you, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.